So what so much of this whole journey is about is residing in the heart. And the nature of the heart is love. Joy. Joy is the byproduct of the love being in relationship with itself. And then there is the habit of what is called the egoic distraction. So there is the nature of the unchanging essence of what you have eternally been, which is not of time, which is not of location, which is not something separate, but the nature of the heart. The nature of wholeness, of oneness. And then there is the conditioned habit, which creates the experience of all of the work. But that conditioned habit was very simply born out of a survival strategy in the experience of the absence of love. So there is a very obvious remedy here. What was born out of the experience of the absence of love is searching for what it experienced to be missing. The whole thing is set up as a constant distractive mechanism, which was born out of an attempt to distract from the hit of having the experience of being separate. And then one spends their life trying to get away from that, and it only perpetuates the very same energetic dynamic. While the nature of yourself, of the heart, is this omnipresent oneness, this union, this love, this beauty. When it is resting in itself, the love loving itself is pure happiness. When it is oriented towards what has forgotten, it is the healing. And what has forgotten is what is called the ego. The desire to get away from the ego is coming from the ego. The desire to become enlightened is coming from the ego. The desire for anything is coming from the ego. All struggle is coming from the ego. All conflict is coming from the ego. Anything that is a thing is coming from the ego. ego due to misunderstanding, to the having the experience coming into the play of separation, of the loss of love, has a deep belief buried underneath that it's because there's something wrong with me. And it is working so hard to try to become enlightened, to get away from itself, to experience love and wholeness. But the very mechanism is the distraction. Every sense of effort you have ever had is simply the ego trying to get love, trying to get away from itself, trying to improve. But it is just a set of adaptive response mechanisms based on a fundamental misunderstanding that there is something wrong. And if there's something wrong with me. The beauty is that the nature of yourself is the heart. The heart is pure love. All it knows to do is to love. The flavor of the love which is omnipresent brings forth the light of pure joy. It is an eternal, unchanging flavor, but the flavor is intermittent for most because they get drawn into this misunderstanding that is searching, rooted in a belief that something is broken. And it is trying so hard, working so hard, struggling so much. But the heart that already is your nature is the love. When heart, which is your nature, which is what is here now and unchanging, what is felt as your own beingness, receives what is called ego. This is the remedy, and it is the beauty, and it is the healing, and it is the depths into such a deep love and passion. From the ego's perspective, there is attempt to stop the mind's thinking, attempt to feel the self, attempt to get away from the misery, attempt to get away from what it really sees as myself. The desire to become enlightened, which means getting away from me. All based upon this mechanical response due to the first hit of the dream of separation. And the heart, which already is the answer. It is not about the ego getting something it cannot. It's not about achieving something, it is impossible. It is about love, which loves everything, shining its gaze on the misunderstanding that is called ego. From the perspective of heart, it holds the space that whatever comes forth, it is so welcome. It is only loved. You can complain. You can get angry. You can be lost in fear. You don't need to try. You don't need to try to do anything. You have been trying for so long. I just want to love you. I just want to love you. And then lo and behold, when there is not a shred that is aligned with a wanting to change, which is coming from ego itself, but just really loving the poignant beauty of the meeting, everything starts to relax all by itself. It is love that is your nature, that completes ego, so that it is ready to dissolve back into from where it came. There becomes this attitude that it doesn't matter to me whether the mind is in distress, whether it is busy, whether it is silent, whether the body is in distress and the mind is having reactions to it. All that matters is wanting to hold this space for this misunderstood aspect that has been working so hard and just wants to be okay. And all you want is to be there. And then what was in the lightest phase of it a nuisance to an outright sense of misery shifts to this poignant beauty that opens the door into this compassion, which leads into this passion. For many of you doing this work, the energy that is fielded has gotten larger and larger. For some, the sense of what once was personal ego has fanned out to be a doorway into collective worldly egoic dynamics, which can be experienced as an enormous burden. But it's not. The truth is, there never was a separate ego. There is not even an ego. But there is this fundamental misunderstanding, and the bigger the space of the heart becomes, the more is welcomed in, and this is how the energetics that bring forth the whole collective play. This is from where all that arises from. So the love that you are welcomes more and more. But it is the same when there is no fear, or if there is fear, there is the holding the space for the fear. When there is no anger or complaining, or if there is anger and complaining, it is holding the space for that. If there is pain, there is holding the space for that, not wanting something to change, not wanting to awaken, not wanting to get away from. But the nature of the heart, the love that you are, receiving the misunderstandings, asking for nothing to change. When there is not the asking for anything to change, it immediately shifts into something of such beauty. Can be challenging, but it is so rich. It is love meeting what was experienced as loveless before. This is the way the light spreads of itself. It begins with the idea of me, just to welcome the idea of me. But what welcomes it is not a me, and this is the key. What welcomes everything is not someone, but the heart, and this is the key.
It's such a gift. Ooh, it's loud. To feel the recognition deepening and to feel myself and the aliveness and the happiness. And just this morning, seeing a way that a deflection happens with Arjuna and I, and there's perceived behaviors that this ego doesn't like, and turning the attention to say that something needs to change in him as a way of deflecting how it's repeating my father and the feeling of disconnection with him, really, and the pain of that. So maybe you can speak more about that. It just happens, but I can see that it's deflection.
Yes, well, it's so beautiful. It's an enormous time when the habit of deflecting, projecting an issue onto someone else, when the humility grows to a point where there is truly the recognition when the stimulus is up, and that habit is so strong, to have the humility to not grab that and to really be within yourself, which affords the possibility of seeing what is really going on. So regardless of what the particulars are, all egoic response is built out of misunderstanding around the belief of rejection, of loss, of wrongdoing. What it is desiring is love. And when you are present and in the heart, you are love itself. So this response comes up. And from the presence and the heart and unconditional love that you are, you meet this misunderstanding. You become the love and the support that was experienced to be absent, not by having the desire for something to resolve, but just meeting yourself, the grace of meeting this injured part of yourself, the beauty and tenderness and poignancy of meeting yourself. And it is so open, nothing needs to change. What is discovered when nothing needs to change is that the meeting itself is the beauty, and then it completes and sheds light on what was misunderstood, and it dissolves. When it is not about it dissolving, when it's about the love of your being meeting a part of your psyche that believed it was unlovable.
Is it also receiving what's perceived as the other fractured ego as myself?
Everything is yourself. There is nothing that is not yourself. Everything is welcome. The nature of the heart is omnipresent, and it welcomes everything. It recognizes that everything is happening by itself, that the whole creation is a replication that has remained alive because there has been a subtle way on the spiritual path of trying to get away from it, replicating the dynamics that created it. But then when the love turns and opens to it, then everything changes. Then there is no longer a shred of your being that wants anything to be different. Then you fall in love with the aspects that you thought you hated. Then you realize your whole life, in truth, you were searching for yourself. And these were buried aspects of yourself that out of misunderstanding, conditioning, tried to keep away. Your heart rips wide open for everything that makes the conditioned ego feel uncomfortable. And all you want to do is wrap your arms around every little tiny sense of discomfort. Yes, you feel that it's so beautiful. Wow. You are so welcome. I have never felt as much joy and light in you. There is the love that you are, the joy that you are, and then there is that which is craving love and joy. There is the wholeness that you are, and then there is that which is craving the wholeness that you are. When there is identification that you are this mechanistic response of misunderstanding, then what happens is there is an attempt to get away from yourself, to become enlightened, meaning to get away from yourself. But when you simply discover who you are, the love that you are, the wholeness that you are, then you discover what is called ego is not the problem. From inside the identification, it is an endless problem because the ego is the distraction from who you are. It can never get what it is after because it is the distraction. But when you know who you are, you realize you are the answer to this sweet, tender misunderstanding that has been hurting for so long and trying so hard. That the love that you are needs nothing. It just wants to open itself to the misunderstanding. It doesn't matter if there is pain in the body. It doesn't matter if the mind is going nuts. It doesn't matter if there is fear, self-hatred. None of it matters. All that matters from the perspective of the heart is reuniting with the aspect of yourself that had been lost. And then everything takes care of itself. It is what is known as falling in love with your humanity. Divinity falling in love with humanity. As opposed to getting the hell out of humanity to find divinity. It is a completely different thing. Meeting the injured psyche. It is like meeting this long-lost child that you have been searching for your whole life, but you didn't know it. An estranged relationship in which you could not be fully whole until there was this true meeting. And out of misunderstanding, there was a wanting to get away from it. But it is the misunderstanding in your own mind. And your nature is pure love. And my God, it is so understandable, all of the pain that comes out of this conditioning. It has been rejected for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Just to curl this up into your arms. The wisdom of the Beloved has recreated this show over and over again for this simple possibility to meet yourself. To meet yourself from the perspective that remembers that this is what you've been searching for your whole life.
I kind of can't believe the level of intensity in the body.
How what?
The level of intensity in the body.
Don't you love it?
Yeah. It's, in a way.
Is that what you would have wanted your mother to say to you when you were little and hurting? Do you love me, mommy? In a way.
In a way.
Kind of.
Yeah, so it's like such a heaviness. It's like you often speak about the fires and the burning life and the forests and the animals. And the idea here is that it's like tens of thousands of people oh fuck, here we go again, With the smoke, it feels more like the collective people vibe of it. But there is some space around it and there is some love for it, but it's just I can't wait to go home.
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
No matter what the particulars are, everything that is experienced as a challenge is a repeat. Nothing is ever new. Ever new. So if you forget the idea of the collective and you just feel what is going on, it will be very clear that that feeling is not new. Now here's the thing of it. There is a conditioned mental response to the feeling that says it's challenging and I want to get away from it. It is the way either one or both of your parents responded to you when you were little and you were hurting. Everything is an exact replication. The opportunity is to meet the whole misunderstanding. The parents wanted to get away when it was challenging because of their own misunderstandings. And then that misunderstanding is carried in what is called my mind. It all comes up out of this wisdom. It's perfect. It's perfect for the nature of the true heart. The heart that is eternally present and felt everywhere. That is not afraid because it's not affected. It's pure love. It's unity. Out of this place, perhaps the greatest hunger is to meet the misunderstandings within your own psyche that have caused the whole roller coaster. Not to get rid of the roller coaster, but to finally fall in love with these aspects that feel that there is something wrong. It's to meet yourself without any shred of following a mind story of wanting it to go away or following a story of it being wrong. Just to meet yourself. Underneath the surface, it's what you've always wanted. Your mind says you wanted a relationship, and you have a relationship now. But all of that time, what was really driving that is this. Your own complete wholeness, which is rooted in holding the space of pure love for all of the aspects that had misunderstanding. You know when you really connect in with it from the place of true unconditional love, because the feeling is, I will never leave you again. I finally see who you are, and all I want to do is be here with you. It's all I've ever really wanted, I just couldn't see. What's going on?
There's this recognition that it's not about understanding, and there's a few things that you shared that feel like just feeling into just receiving the connection and the transmission, and also there's like some wanting to comprehend the perspective of, for example, taking on the way my parents reacted to little Jason. You're saying is something that's being processed inside
your mind with the energy in your body.
So
the mind's response for every player, not wanting to get into this in too much detail, but with every single player, the mind's response to things that are uncomfortable in the body is the parent's response to the child when they were feeling upset. I don't really want to go too much into the psychology. That's really not what matters. What matters it is just to hold the space. It's a doorway. It's a doorway. It's a doorway. It's coming out of this wisdom. I know now the mind's making a lot of noise of wanting to be freed of it, wanting it to feel more comfortable. But you remain long enough and eventually enough will burn away, and you will discover that being with this type of thing is actually the greatest hunger you have. You know, an example is if you were to see a little child, a beautiful little child, and you were really to fall in love with this child. and they would be going through the kind of distress you're going through. Not because of an idea of the collective, but maybe the body was just feeling intense of this little child. Whatever it is, it was replicating the same kind of feeling. And the little child was in distress. It would be easy for you to just open yourself, not demanding anything, just being there. But this is at a whole different level. This is meeting the inner parts of your own psyche. It's the doorway into yourself. Experience is irrelevant. Love is everything. God has offered this dynamic. It is to open the heart of yourself to God's offering. It does not mean it is not challenging, but it's right.
Yeah, the word poignancy has been coming through. Poignant. When it's not felt as personal, the poignancy is felt. The aliveness of it. And
Felt what?
the aliveness of it. And really there's this
Yes, it's okay.
May I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
Just a curiosity, that's what was coming up, is when things are fielded in your form, in this way, is there also that
Yes, there's also that.
the awareness of this body's particular karma or generational, it doesn't really matter, but yeah.
I don't think there's any thought process that goes on around it.
Because there's a part of me that feels like it's just being with it. But when I said I wanted to go home, by the way, I meant literally to my cabin and just rest. And
it is to do what is kind.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It's just to do what's kind.
I mean, I would imagine thoughts come here, like, I can't wait to, when there's, anyway, you know.
You mean kind of like right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just be kind to your body is about all I can say. If you want to go home right now, you're welcome to. Oh, Lord. You know, there is a very clear understanding of what is going on. Something most everybody can relate to. There are times where the discomfort is very great. and the egoic mind is having great reaction to it. All reaction is the egoic mind. There is no reaction without the egoic mind. The egoic mind is what created the body of flesh. So there are times where it is a very intense burn, and the burning is grace, even though it can be very intense. Eventually the burning burns through enough that there is a recognition that you never would have imagined. That you're wildly in love with this misunderstanding that created the process of thinking. Out of a sense of something terribly wrong, and that arose because of misunderstanding, and it lives in your own mind. And the hunger of the heart is to meet in this pure love with the fractured mind that does not understand. Not about bringing in understanding or a change, but just a pull of the love itself. There is this hunger to be in service to the world. It is a deflection around the true hunger to be in service to yourself. It is the truest, most direct hunger, and everything reflects that. The nature of the fractured mind is it deflects everything away from itself, out of misunderstanding. But when enough is burned away, you realize you are so in love with this sweet, injured thing that it's not about the pain going away, it's not about the irritation going away, it's not about anything going away, it's not about the mind wanting it or not wanting it to go away. It's about realizing that you've been given a second chance to reconnect with yourself. You spent a life and lifetime after lifetime trying to get away from something where all you've ever really wanted is to be in this deep, loving connection. And then everything turns on itself. Then the mind starts screaming about something, and what arises inside of you is, oh, I just want to be with you. I just love you. You can scream as long as you want. I so understand your screaming. You have been rejected for so long, and now finally I see. And I'm here for you. You fall in love with what you were always trying to get away from. And you're falling in love with yourself. And it is the completion of yourself. It ceases to be about the intensity of the energy. It ceases to be about the particulars of the dynamic. the whole thing becomes about nothing but the love to hold yourself. And it feels, when you are really in yourself, like you've been given a second chance. Like a parent that abandoned a child, but then is given a second chance. And nothing is more important to you than being there for yourself. Just receiving it, you can feel how it is so heart expanding. When there is nothing in particular that is up, it is just resting as yourself, as the heart that is omnipresent and not oriented towards anything. The love that is in relationship with itself. And love in relationship with itself gives birth to joy. The nature of joy is pure light. When something is going on, as opposed to trying to get away from, it is to open yourself, which is the heart and the presence that you are. To be with yourself, the part of yourself that does not understand. To receive yourself, the part of yourself that has never experienced being received. To completely love yourself, the part of yourself that doesn't know what it is like to be completely loved. And then you discover what was always experienced as a challenge has always been the potential of the most beautiful offering. The mind cannot awaken. The mind cannot get away from itself. It is just a distractive program that is born out of misunderstanding. But when out of the wisdom comes the complete love that you are, that you don't need to awaken mind. Mind does not need to awaken. You do not need to try mind. You do not need to improve. I just love you. And lo and behold, the thinking process begins to slow down. Only when it does not matter if it does or not. There is such amazing wisdom at the nature of how everything plays when it is just surrendered to do what it does. The whole orientation in the last day has shifted. Could have never anticipated. Had no idea it was coming forth even when it started to come forth. But the feeling of the wisdom and the perfection of the timing of everything that is coming from something that knows everything. Just like every single time there is the experience of something that feels challenging and the conditioned mind tries to get away from, or whatever it does, it's always coming from the wisdom. It's all an offering. And when you have met yourself so fully, the more intense the stirring, the deeper the passion to go in and be with aspects of yourself that have been fragmented. Thank you all for Satsang.